And what I believed about me and what I saw echoed in a lot of the women that I spoke to, we start to internalize the talk track that says, it's got to be me. I'm the one that's failing here. I must be the only one. And that moment when you realize you're not alone is incredibly powerful. And it's often the first step of reclaiming something, whether it's identity or control over your hormones or just an unsettled feeling that you have within you that says, hey, something is not right. I must be the problem. I'm the crazy one. Something is wrong with me. And the reality was I was not the problem.
Hi, I'm Lennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe.
I'm really excited to share with you, everyone, a book that was sent to me by the author Angela Burke, and I really love it. It's called The Real Girl's Guide to Midlife. She talks about a lot of the things that we deal with as we move into midlife. And I'm so glad that she's here today to tell us about the book and tell us a little bit about her and what motivated her to write this book. Angela, welcome to the Vibe Living Podcast. It's wonderful having you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so excited for our chat.
The Real Girl's Guide to Midlife. It's a bold approach, but I could so relate to what you were talking about. And it really resonated with me when we talk about what happens with us emotionally, physically, spiritually, and that identity shift that happens during midlife. And even though it's funny, I'm trying to come up with a new term for where I'm at because I'm 68. I'll be 69 in a couple of months. So I don't know. I'm not really midlife. That would mean I would live to be 130 something. I don't know. I'm just past the midlife part, but many of the things that happen in midlife is still relevant right now at this age. And as I tell my clients all the time, menopause never ends. Menopause is a cycle of life. I don't know where folks came into this whole idea thinking, oh, I'm past menopause. I'm going to say, girlfriend, no, you're not. It's still happening. But welcome. We're so glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about you and what motivated you to write.
Yeah, everything that you said in the lead up is so true. I was one of those folks who believed that once you stopped having a period, you got to turn in your card and everything was done. And I'm slowly realizing that this is not, it's a never ending story. But so it's a little bit about me. I'm in my mid 50s. I live in California. I split my time between here and Australia. An amazing man I met about 10 years ago lives in Australia. That is definitely a break the rule book kind of relationship that I have with a man who doesn't even live in the same country as me, but somehow it works. I'm a mom of 3. He came to our relationship with 4 children. So together we have 7 children, which is a staggering number. I spent 30 years in corporate marketing, high-tech marketing, and then I retired in December of 24. And what prompted me to write the book is actually an interesting story. I had this book idea when I was 35, and it was going to be called The Real Girl's Guide to Over 35 because I was at a really interesting crossroads at that time. I had 2 children. I was in a marriage that I think there were some cracks in. My hormones were starting to change, but I didn't have language 20 years ago about what was happening. That's right. I was at one of many career crossroads. And my hormones were shifting. My appearance was subtly starting to change, nothing tragic or dramatic. But I'm looking around and everybody seems to have everything together. Everybody's shiny and solid. And I thought, it must be me. And I had all these questions. So I started to write them down. I started to outline this book and I put it in a red folder. And that folder literally and figuratively got buried. And so when I retired, I had a really small pile on my work desk that had moved with me between houses. And the pile was like this thick, nothing major, but I cleaned out the pile and I found the red folder. And I opened the folder and I thought, look at that. Turns out a lot of the things I had questions about then, maybe I worked through, not elegantly, but I worked through. I had a whole new set of questions and there were still some underlying commonalities, not the least of which was I'm looking around and all these new waves of shifts and transitions and feelings and emotions, nobody was talking about them. So I spent a couple months talking myself out of writing the book, a similar talk track that I had built and perfected when I was working, which was, who am I to think I could write a book? The good news about that talk track in my mid-50s is it still creeps up, but I can short circuit it. So the questions, who think I can write a book? And who are you? Nobody's going to read this book. Quickly exited and became, why not? Why not me? Why not this book? Why not now? And so I started writing the book and I self-published it and got it out. And yeah, that's the story of the book.
And I love your book. And it's so funny. I'll tell you what really resonated with me. I too am in a second marriage. And when we got married, my oldest she was 16. And then I had a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And he had a 15-year-old son. I had 4 girls, 1 boy. And then the blended family was really interesting. One of the things that was really interesting was that we had different parenting styles. And we really didn't know that. And that was crazy. Thankfully, my ex-husband was really a wonderful person. And so he helped bridge the gap. But my current husband, he wanted it to be one big family and that he would be the man. It doesn't work that way if the husband, the father's still alive and still active in the life.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was just beginning menopause about a few years later, didn't realize it at the time. And I had an aha moment in terms of realizing that after 25 years in corporate America, I was in human resources on the VP level. And I just walked away from all of that and began to build a different kind of life with my new husband and a blended family and a brand new business. All the while in the throes of menopause and not even truly realizing what it was until I began to just get more information about other issues from a wellness perspective, since that was my chosen new profession. Then so many years later, seriously, like when I was about 63, I was like, oh, that's what was going on.
Turns out I had it. Yeah. It's funny. I feel a lot of that too. And I think what's unique about women, right? Where we sit in this midlife, right? And the real truth is midlife is not a decade. It is a period of time. It's a period of transition. And it's not a magic decade. It's not a magic age. It just is this period of transition. And so for me, I think I started to become aware of midlife when I was in my mid-30s. And these first waves of transitions were hitting me. And they've continued. And in talking to women for the book in their 60s and 70s, and the oldest real girl in the book is 82, these transitions continue to come. And I think what is happening for us, though, for women, and I've seen this kind of again and again, that women reach this magical midlife and they start noticing shifts everywhere. And they happen all at once, which nobody tells us about. Your body, your relationships, your careers, your identity, your hormones are changing. If you're a parent, your kids are growing. They need you differently. They're leaving. Marriages are beginning. They're ending. Careers are plateauing or they're pivoting. And everything stops aligning in a way. And yet nobody really prepared me for that convergence. And I felt it in my 40s, but man, it all just converges at the same time.
It's not like a conversation we have with our moms. Now, I'm a baby boomer, and I think you're not quite a baby boomer.
I think I'm Gen X. My youngest 15-year-old and I have this debate all the time. He calls me boomer, I think just to rage bait me, but I think I'm Gen X.
Yeah, you're Gen X. So baby boomer parents definitely were not talking about this.
No.
They just weren't talking about it. And for me, unfortunately, my mom passed when she was 56. She wasn't sick. She was in a car accident.
Oh.
And so I never got a chance. When I was 31, when she had passed, and I had just had my 3rd child, and she was 6 weeks old at the time.
Oh.
So I never got a chance to ask her about this. Not to say that it would have been a conversation, because I know that my close friends weren't having these conversations with their mothers either. So fast forward to my 50s, even though I would go to the doctor maybe on a yearly basis, maybe not, just depends on what was going on. It was never mentioned to me that I was in menopause or when I was going to start, or let's just draw a panel to see where you are. That was not a conversation. There was nothing. And there's some real harsh realities as to why that is. There was a big gap for years in terms of women's health. There was the reproductive health. Okay. And then when you're old in the hospital, geriatric,
yeah.
Not a whole lot in between. The reality is a problem with that. There's like about 40 years there that's missing. And one of the reasons why I think that is that, quite frankly, for many years, there were men who were running all this.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, since the 70s and 80s and 90s and on, we're beginning to have, now we do have more females in the healthcare field. And so finally, some of this research is being done. Communication is happening just a couple months ago, 3 months ago, in November of 2025. They finally recommunicated the study about HRT that was done
Right.
30 years hence.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
gave the wrong interpretation.
Yeah.
And doctors, as a result, were afraid to prescribe HRT. So women were walking around with all of these symptoms and with no real relief in sight, except for the hope of outgrowing the symptoms while dealing with all of these changes.
100%. And that was me. So I entered menopause at 47. So I felt I was on the early side, and I raw dogged the whole thing until last December when I found a new doctor, and it was all very serendipitous. I was interviewing an expert for the book in July, which happened to coincide with the FDA's panel on vaginal estrogen cream and removing the black box label. I listened to that panel. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not studied. But this was the most educational panel discussion worth the 2 hours of time. And I was dealing with a new wave of symptoms with things that I had never experienced before. So I saw my doctor, same doctor I had for 25 years. She delivered all my babies. I sat with her and I said, hey, here are my new symptoms. And she gave me the sympathetic head nod. And she's, yeah, it sucks. And I thought, that is insufficient. Found a new doctor, started on very managed and controlled hormone therapy in December. And I've noticed a huge difference. And I wouldn't have had the confidence or even the knowledge to go do that had it not been for the shifts that are happening. And I think one of the other things you talked about, not only do we have this convergence, everything is hitting us all at one time. The fact that our moms didn't talk about it. I'm 19 years younger than my mom. My mom is still alive. It wasn't a conversation that we had. I didn't know what to ask. She didn't volunteer it. And her experience was very different than what mine was. So when it happens and all of these things are happening, there's a level of guilt and shame and fear that comes with it. And what I believed about me and what I saw echoed in a lot of the women that I spoke to, we start to internalize the talk track that says, it's got to be me. I'm the one that's failing here. I must be the only one. And that moment when you realize you're not alone is incredibly powerful. And it's often the first step of reclaiming something, whether it's identity or control over your hormones or just an unsettled feeling that you have within you that says, hey, something is not right. I have to make a change. But it's a very isolating feeling when all of these things are happening to you and nobody's talking. And the natural first belief, at least I had for many years, was I'm just not doing this right. I must have been absent on this day in school when they taught this. I must be the problem. I'm the crazy one. Something is wrong with me. And the reality was I was not the problem.
Well, it's interesting because one of the messages that I've been sharing a lot with my community over the last 6 months is that, first of all, you're not broken. There's something wrong with you and you're not alone. What you're experiencing and what you're going through, millions of women are. The only difference is, or the only issue is that we're not talking about it. And we need to talk about it. In fact, when we talked about the periods, some people called it the curse. But
I remember.
Yes, but I do remember going to an assembly with my mom when I was in 6th grade. And at the end of the assembly, they gave you a little purse with the pad and the belt and all that. So there was that kind of thing. But in terms of talking about what's going to happen after that goes away and all the different levels, and never mind the part about the body, that's one thing. But that's like a third of it. The other 2/3 is all emotional and spiritual and lifestyle changes and things like that. Think about all the roles we play at this time. While our body is, in some people's description, betraying us, we also are becoming, in some cases, grandparents, but also worrying about the care of our elderly parents. As you said, our career may be changing. We decide all of a sudden it's either hit the wall or we want to do something totally different. Our marriages are coming to an end, or you've decided to recommit because at this point you feel like you're too old to do anything about it.
Better than being alone. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Yeah.
Exactly. The children are are getting ready to go to college and you are faced with the idea, how am I going to do all of this and still retire at the time that I want to? Because the economy is such now that the retirement plans I made 20 years ago is a drop in the bucket in terms of how my finances are being drained for the grandchildren, my elderly parents in college, and the idea of maybe getting out of this crappy relationship so I can live by myself and finally have some joy.
Yeah.
That's
It's all of it. It's all of it. And I think I say yes to all of that. And I think one of the other dimensions that happen for a lot of us, and this is not a pervasive all female problem, but for me and for a lot of the women that I talk to in the book, added to this is the fact that we are conditioned to be good, right? We're conditioned to be the good girls, the peacemakers, the quiet girls, the small girls, the girls that carry the load of everybody around us, the girls that don't make waves, the girls that deal with the problems, the fixers, the solutioners, the finders. And that role, that kind of being the good girl, being this quiet one, being the one who has to make everybody comfortable, starts to break down, I think, in midlife. And again, you can dissect, well, why is that? Many of us were raised with this version of being the good girl script, right? There's lots of derivatives of it, right? You're accommodating, you keep the peace, you take care of everyone. The conditioning shows up everywhere in your career, in your marriage, and how you mother, even in how we look after our own health and our bodies and our emotional, spiritual, mental well-being. And for a long time, I think women can operate inside this script because life is so busy. You're raising your kids if you're a mom, you're building careers, you're managing households, but the landscape changes when you hit this midlife, right? Again, not a magic decade, but this transition in these generations of our life, these years of our lives, change it. And then all of a sudden, the roles, as you talked about, shift. And then when that happens, that is the opportunity for us to take a pause and go, hey, I've got to ask some honest questions to myself. And not the least of which, is this actually the life I want to live? And that's the moment where the script starts to shift. And it's because the noise around us quiets. It's because we're starting to become a little bit more possessive of ourselves again. It's because we have the ability to just pause for a minute and say, something is unsettled. What is it? And then we start to do the interrogation of what that is. And it's, in my mind, I don't view that as women are not failing. We're simply waking up to the fact that we've had and probably allowed all of these preferences and needs and ambitions of everybody else to trump those of ourselves. And that's a moment, that's a very empowering, it's scary. It's a very empowering, though, place to be when you can quiet that noise and ask yourself that question. Is this actually the life I want to live?
Absolutely. And we're going to take a pause right back. But when we get back, we're going to be asking Angela about this personal manifesto. But right now, we take a pause for the cause of the day, and let's take a look at our wonderful sponsor.
Let me ask you, how often are you dealing with congestion, sinus pressure, or allergies and just pushing through it? If that's you, I want to share something that really made a difference for me. It's called Sonu, a drug-free, FDA-approved therapy that uses personalized sound waves to help open your nasal passages. What makes it unique is that the sound waves are custom tuned to your facial structure. So it's designed specially for you. When I started using it, I noticed a real shift, especially with that stuffy nose I used to wake up with every morning. It actually helped me breathe clearly again. Those gentle vibrations work through your sinus cavities too, calming inflammation, reducing congestion, and supporting natural airflow. And it even works with your nervous system to reduce swelling. No medication needed. If you want to check it out for yourself, click the link on my show page to learn more.
I love the part of the book when you were talking about a personal manifesto. And I want you to know I did the exercise and it makes all the difference in the world. Tell us about that and how you came up with it and why you think it's so important that we all have a personal manifesto.
Yeah, it's a really great question. I'm going to tell you how I came up with it and why. And it was really because of this. I realized that I spent a lot of my life not keying into the things that I wanted and not asking for what I needed. I was trained and became very accustomed to being uncomfortable with saying no. I believed that saying no needed to be followed by a dissertation and an explanation. And I owed the world this rationale for why I didn't want to do something. I believed that asking for rest or admitting that I was tired was somehow a sign of laziness or weakness. Those things are just fallacies. And what I realized was I also didn't ask for what I needed. And asking for what I needed did not have to be me standing on a kitchen table and yelling throughout the house. It started with whether it's me in this room or me by myself someplace else, I say out loud the thing I need. I might not say it to anybody else, but I say it to myself. So if I'm working, as a very small example, something comes up and I go, I don't want to do that thing. I'll say out loud, I don't want to do that. And by saying something out loud, even if to yourself, it changes the thought pattern. We all have thought patterns, right? And our thought patterns beget action patterns. But when you say something out loud, even to yourself, it interrupts that thought pattern. And all of a sudden, you now can open up your brain for new thoughts. And when you open up your brain for new thoughts, all of a sudden your actions. So that to me, it was that small little practice of when I said what I needed out loud, even to myself, I thought differently. And I was like, okay, there's something in that. And then with the manifesto, I realized change can start with the smallest action. I don't believe that midlife is about blowing up your whole life. And I don't believe that we have to have the perfect plan before we take action. It can start with something like a sentence. So then I thought, okay, cool. If that sentence is me sitting in my office going, I don't want to do this thing, and me saying it out loud, which then prompts me to think differently and then behave differently because I've said what I needed and what I wanted out loud. What else can I do that allows me to verbalize something that I want to let go of, something that I want to reclaim, and something that some action I am prepared to take in order to progress? That becomes a personal contract to me. So when I feel like I'm pulling myself into old thought patterns or old scripts or old behavior, I can open up to a piece of paper. And that is the contract I made with myself. So that manifesto is really, there's a very detailed exercise in the book, but it's as simple as, and you can start by writing down one thing you want to be done caring, whether that's a story about yourself, it's a belief, it's an activity, one thing you want to reclaim, something that you want to start, something that you want to revisit, something that you want to embrace and bring into your life. And you write that down and that becomes your personal contract.
And I love that. You said when you were working on the book, one of the things that you mentioned was that you realized that you spent way too long letting other people write your story, which is so true for so many women because of all the roles that we play. And as a result, all the people that are speaking into our lives. And the thing I loved about the book is it gives every woman who's been told that she's just too much, or that her best years are behind her. It's spoiler alert.
Not true.
Absolutely not true. I can attest to that. I am 68, getting ready to be 69, and I am living the best time of my life right now. I really am. I'm not just saying that. I've had more fun, more adventures. I've tried more new things. So much of the quality of our life depends on what's going on between our two ears. Of course,
100%.
we want to be healthy, but you can be healthy in your body and still have unhealthy things going on between your two ears.
100%. And I think that I am more excited about turning 60, about my 60s, about my 70s, and hopefully about my 80s than I ever imagined I would be, because I have not a new body, not a new life, but because my mindset is different. And that mindset is not just how I think, but it's my emotional state, it's my spiritual state, it's my mental state. And all of these things are maybe for the first time putting me at the center of my own life. And that doesn't mean that I'm a selfish person. That doesn't make me self-centered. It doesn't make me any of those things. It's the proverbial, for those of us who fly, we're told, what are we told? Whose mask do you put on first? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of that song from back in the 80s. And I think it's a song that might have been a little bit ahead of its time, but it's a song whose time had come and needed to be. And that had to do with Patti LaBelle's song, New Attitude.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
And it's so important because one of the things that happens as we approach this midlife phase of our life, as we begin to head into another phase, we do have an opportunity to really adapt a new attitude and try something different, to try something new that we've always wanted to try, and to realize that we are truly in control. We are the captain of our own ship. We may not be able to control what's going on around us outside the world, or even in our children's life as they get older, or our husbands,
Right.
friends, employers, parents, but we can control in terms of the thoughts that we think and how we think about ourselves and how we treat ourselves. And that is so important. And when you take a look at the book, I know I walked away. The thing I walked away with that was so important was that manifesto and actually saying these things to myself. But what is it that you want women to learn as a result of reading your book?
It's such a good question. And I think part of it is women who are in our phase, right? Who are in our decades, approaching 60s, 70s, 80s, and also for the women who are in their 30s and 40s and white knuckling. Lots of change there that happens during those years as well. I'd like us to remember that it's not a crisis. I remember I grew up with this phrase of a midlife crisis. It's not. I was never falling apart. You're not falling apart. I was not crazy. You're not crazy. And I was never alone. You're not alone. Those are things that I hope people gain from the book. I also, especially for kind of the women coming up, I have two younger sisters. One is in her late 30s, one just turned 40. And I like to say that I'm their crash test dummy on a lot of things. One of the things that I think is really important is I wish somebody would have told me that my body was going to change faster than my mind. And that I wish somebody would have told me that those old scripts and those stories that other people wrote about me do not get the last word. They
That's
do
right.
not own me. I have the last
Absolutely.
word. And yeah,
I love that. And I got to share this part of the lyric from Patti LaBelle because this is
yeah.
so true. And I'm thinking about when she did this, and she might have been approaching her 50s
I
too.
was going to say she must have been
Yeah,
in
I
her
think she might
40s or
have been.
probably close to
I mean,
50.
take a look at this. And I never knew what these words really might have meant until I read the lyrics in preparation to talk to you.
Yeah.
And it said, running hot, running cold. I'm running into overload. It was extreme. It took it so high, so low, so low. There was nowhere to go. Like a bad dream. Somehow the wires were crossed, the tables were turned, and never knew I had such a lesson to learn.
Oh man.
That's so
Doesn't that just say it all?
That is what it is. Because
It
all of a
is.
sudden your wires do get uncrossed if you allow it.
Yep.
And you realize, okay, wait a minute. I want to change this. This isn't
Yeah.
working for me. Or there's more to life. I know that's what happened to me at 51. I said, wait a minute. I want to change this.
Yeah.
It wasn't the new husband that did it. It wasn't the girls being launched and going to college. It wasn't buying the new home and meeting all these goals. It was about finally meeting myself
Yeah. Yeah.
and recognizing that there were still other things that I wanted to do that had nothing to do with all this other stuff.
Correct. That's right. That song is now I'm going to listen to it once we're done. Yeah. So she knew what she was talking about. So that should be our new anthem. But B, I do think that this phase is about us. And there's no selfishness. There's no self-centeredness. It is about us. One of the things that I did recently was I decided I wanted to learn to play the drums. So 6 weeks ago, I started drum lessons.
Wow, how's it going?
I love it. I love it. It turns out I'm really good at it. And the cross body coordination is good for brain health, keeping your mind sharp. There's different rhythms that you have to do with different parts of your body. You're coordinating your eyes and your brain, and you're crossing your arms. And it's just, I love it. I love it.
That's fantastic. Angela, it has been wonderful having you here. I could talk to you forever. I am so excited to meet you. You are a woman of many talents, award-winning marketing strategist, mother of 3, plus a bonus mother of 4, a fierce advocate for women who are ready to reclaim their stories, and now an author. Thank you so much for being here on the V.I.B.E. Living Podcast. It's been wonderful having you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to all of you who've been listening. I want to make sure that we thank our sponsor, Somnu, for joining us today. Thank you so much. Check out the link in my profile there in the show notes. And also check out Angela's book. The link to her book is there, as well as information about her and her websites and social media. I really want to tell you, everyone, this is a book you definitely want to read. If you are in the throes of midlife and wondering what the heck is going on, reading this book will help you figure it out. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a fantastic day. And don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the V.I.B.E. Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.